how wide is your patch, okay? Put in how long your patch is, and this is in feet, okay? In feet. And then we're gonna times that by 0.66, because 8 inches is 2/3 of a foot, right? So you're gonna have a number, and in my example I had a 30 by 30, so one plant, 900 square feet, 8 inches deep, and came up with the 594. You've got your number. So now take your number and divide it by 27, because 27 cubic feet are in a cubic yard, right? Because a cubic yard's 3, 3, 3. All the construction guys here doing concrete know exactly what I'm talking about. But, okay, so that's how many yards it would take. And in this example, it would be 22 cubic yards per plant to put down 8 inches of compost. Okay, so how much is a yard? So your full-size pickup will hold 1.5 to 2 yards of compost. So that's 11 pickup trucks, 11 to 15, depending on how they're loading you, trips to the dump.
8-foot beds, right?
Per plant with a full-size bed, full-size pickup. If you have a half ton, or you've got a Tacoma, you're probably more like 3/4 of a yard maybe in there. So it ends up being a lot of trips to the dump, right? If you've got a dump trailer, it fits about 9 cubic yards loaded full, and that's about 10 to 12,000 pounds of compost in that full. So it's a big load. And so you would need how many of those? 2.5 of those per plant. So, and that, I mean, I realize it's money, but if you're going to spend money, I would just personally, I think it's wise to spend it on the big rocks first. Like I wouldn't even think about buying fancy fertilizers or Mycos or anything else until the big rock was totally covered. Then move on to something. Just my personal thought. So it's about $100 for a dump trailer of compost.
Isn't it best to put it in the fall though too?
The compost I use is plant matter only, no manure. So there's no nitrogen that has to burn off. It's from the dump. It's leaf clipping, leaf
As long
and
as
lawn
it's
clippings.
seasoned, you can use it whenever. It's if it's hot or if it's just green, then you want to wait for a little while.
Yeah, I mean if it's got manure in it, if it's a manure-based compost, you may want to give it a minute.
You
But
can,
the
you
leaf
can
stuff
usually
from the
tell
dump?
by the smell.
Next day,
If it smells earthy,
or tastes.
Steve's tasted a lot of
but
Yeah.
if you smell it and it smells earthy, usually it's good to go. If you smell it or it feels hot in your hand or it's steaming, then
If it
usually
doesn't
a lot
taste
of times
good,
it will.
don't put it on.
If it has an ammonia smell. If you do a snow
Yeah,
angel and it's
more of an ammonia
oh,
smell.
yeah.
So full-size dump truck, like commercial dump truck, call a excavator and have them deliver it. It's 1.5 dumps per plant. So we've talked compost, and if we're talking about converting compost to actual bags of leaves, to get that quantity of organic matter, carbon into your soil, we're talking about 437 leaf bags per plant. So I kind of gave up on leaves because it's just so much work. It is free though. So you can go around in the fall and all the neighbors, I don't know, that's how it is in Ogden, set them out and they have a leaf day where they come pick it up. So I would go around with the trailer, just throwing leaves on, threw out my back, and I'm like, man, I'd rather just, pay $100 for a dump trailer and try to freshen it up that way. It's a little easier. And I think it's better because if you get massive quantities of uncomposted leaves, you got a whole new set of problems on your hands.
Just to till in that many leaves though, you gotta till that in and
Yeah.
then you gotta, before you put any more leaves on, because you can't just throw 2 feet of leaves on it, turn your tiller on it.
It's a bad idea.
You have to use a lawnmower and go around like 20.
Chopping them up
Yeah,
like
chopping
that.
them up, yeah.
And so I do think leaves are good.
And there's a whole element to having compost that you purchased that's been hot composted and warmed up really well.
100%.
And then like a bunch of leaves that get rotten and nasty, and you're trying to get them to break down. We try to compost like in big ways. We put lots of biomatter and stuff and do our own composting. so much work trying to get that stuff to the river, and I have a backhoe.
It is work.
So much work.
You gotta water
to
it,
just
turn
buy
it,
some. Yeah.
water it, monitor it, add nitrogen. Lindsay, what were you saying?
It seems like, isn't there some leaf that's bad to put in it?
You know,
Walnut leaves,
yeah, walnut leaves are bad. And certain things you put in there can like lower acidity, for instance, pine.
Well, I was just gonna say, when you're doing your own composting, one of the issues is most people don't get it hot enough.
Correct.
Because you're not killing off any kind of, if there's any disease in your compost or in
Yeah.
the plant, you're not gonna kill it off, so. But usually the landfill, they get that up to 150+ degrees.
Oh, it's steaming when they're dumping it in.
It's
And
plenty hot because their piles are so big.
they're big, they have the equipment, and they're turning it properly, and they're most importantly, adding water. If you have a dry compost pile, it will not work. If it's too cold, it will not work. So they're actively, I mean, you have to often dump nitrogen fertilizer on your compost to get it heated up, or people will use lawn clippings to heat it up. So has anyone gone to like this, give me one of these if like, you've gone to like that level. I mean, I know there's people in here who have.
I've put probably 600 bags at least in my garden.
Okay.
Okay, so, you know,
I-
and that wasn't enough.
Well, and Dave, how many pounds did you grow?
Well, in those years.
1,400 pounds.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, when you get it there, it's gonna show in a big way. And that's why I've always said, if I had $100 to spend on pumpkins, I would buy compost. If I had $500 to spend on pumpkins, I'd buy compost. If I had $1,000 to spend, I'd buy $900 worth of compost and a tractor rental. Because I wouldn't even think about spending any other money anywhere else until like this was done, just me personally.
Are you talking like starting off a patch, or are you gonna add 8 inches every year?
I got,
When you
well,
stop, when you hit a certain organic matter?
I usually add like a foot to start a new patch, and then 4 inches or so every year.
As maintenance?
Mhm.
I
there an organic matter?
tested at 21% organic matter.
Yeah, and there's people out there that really, are against high organic matter. I personally think it works, especially with our natives.
We bring in dump trucks, and at first I thought that the garden was just gonna get really hot tall, but when it breaks down, it really
Disappears.
drops, right?
Yeah.
It just disappears over time.
Yeah, it's shocking. You need maintenance. You really need maintenance. Okay,
But that's because
they're saying
from the dump. I like it from the dump.
It's cheap.
It's cheap, it's freshly managed, they have free days at the dump if budget's an issue. Go on Earth Day, it's free. Get in the line, it's a pain in the butt, but it's free.
Cache
So,
Valley, it's $10 a
yeah.
yard, it's more like $2.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, when you go over there and you say yard, they're gonna load your pickup up till it's full as it can get. and it's $10.
100%. It's worth every single minute.
Cache Valley.
Okay, let's talk temps. This thing, after we're done with compost, I'm spending my next $100 on this, okay? Like if there's still money left in the budget, does anyone use these?
I have.
You don't like them? I can see the look on your face.
You can get one for 20 bucks.
Are they 20?
Oh,
But it doesn't have enough power to handle a big on-the-roof soil.
So I think this one is, I think it'll have 1,800 watts. 1,800
How
watts.
many amps? Or you-
So I hook my circuits up at like 30 amps. I mean, you need a lot of juice.
Right,
But I
right.
put this into the ground, set this to 78, and throw heat tape on it. Then I get another one of these, set this in the air inside the hoop house, and put a 1,500 watt heater on there. Now, it's the exact same thing Travis was saying. It's just, instead of milk jugs taking solar energy and distributing it in the evening, if we're gonna go like too advanced, this will keep it at 68 degrees all night long, right? I mean, it's just, don't put the heater toward the plant, tip of the day.
What's your tip with the, you do the heat tape, like on your soil, like, because I've done the cables, but then you got to pull them up, and it's just ridiculous. Like, way too much effort for me.
Is it, what I do, get them down there like 12 inches, at the end of the season, just run a tiller over those
You
things.
just leave them there.
Yeah, kill 'em. They
No,
just-
it tills them up.
That's what I'm saying.
I've done that twice.
But that's what I'm saying, like,
I've done it every year.
Yeah.
That's the easy way out.
so how do you, I mean, because then you gotta dig it up.
Yeah, you do.
Right? I put it on a
But
fence chain and
I
had to
can
dig
tell
it
you
up,
this.
but it was just.
I don't put it on fencing or anything. I just walk up and I pull it out. I grab the end and I just pull, and it just.
You just leave them freely and.
Which also means what?
Loose
That might
soil.
not work.
Yeah, at the end of the season,
Yeah,
if your
you can
soil
pull it out.
consistency
That's
is
pretty good.
correct, you should be able to just rip it out. If it's like break, then there's a problem with compost. We go back to step one. It needs to be so loose that at the end of the season, after consistent watering, it is still, go to Ross's house if you want to see how it works. Get a piece of rebar at the end of September on soil that's been watered all summer long and just go. That's why he grew a 2,000 pounder.
My problems go back to step one.
You know, so it's really, it is a pain, it is work, I see what you're saying. It's easy, what I try to do is, equipment does help, or child labor, whatever you have access to. I have them like, I actually just grab a tractor, scrape it back like a foot deep, lay out the cables, push the dirt back. At the end, getting them out by hand, but anyway.
What's that thing called?
This is called a ready heat thermostat. I just like them because they're accurate and adjustable. Like the heat cables that have a built-in thermostat to me are more unreliable. I can stick this right at my root ball and it's telling me exactly. And the light comes on when it's on and you can just see it clicking on and off, see it clicking on and off. Extremely reliable. I'm a huge fan of automation because if I water by hand, something in my life is going to happen and I can't be consistent. If I'm trying to heat it by hand and turn off lights and open hoops, there's something's going to happen and I'm not going to be consistent. If there's a way to automate what you're doing, it will be more accurate. And at the end of the day, that incremental bit helps.
Do you keep that going year round?
Yeah,
So even in the summer, does it kick on for
if
the
it
soil?
needs to kick on, it'll kick on. A lot of times in the summer it doesn't.
Okay.
Because it never hits my 68, you know?
Yeah.
And I actually, when I'm planting, I go 78 on soil temp. It's like radiating
So
heat.
you're using roof
Roof
heaters?
heat tape,
Okay,
Yeah.
just the regular type that you put in
Yeah.
gutters and on roofs?
yeah. I use,
Without
I think like
thermostat.
90 footers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of power.
What?
That's the
Yeah,
thermostat.
that's the thermostat.
That's the
Right, I
thermostat.
understand.
Just plug in your heat tape. Make sure you got some amps out there. I mean,
Yeah,
it'll
you'll
throw a
melt your,
breaker real
yeah,
quick.
Yeah,
And then the heater kicks on and the heat tape and it will throw breakers.
yeah.
So hook it to different extension cords to different circuits in your house or garage.
So what are you doing if you're not opening or doing anything to the hoop house, right? In the hotter times of the day, just something in there to keep it cool as well so it doesn't hit that 100+ degrees?
Couple things. I shade from day one. Especially after watching Ross this year. I'm convinced more shade is better for the plant than too little shade. So they'll sunburn in May, you know. So I would get the hoop, shade the hoop. You know, and if there's a way, if you wanted to hook fans up or something to kind of circulate air
Yeah.
on an automated system, do it. If you can't do that, shade it good and open the hoop. You know, the closer we can get it to optimal, which I honestly think is like high 70s.
70% shade.
No,
Temperature.
Temperature.
So
How much
I use
percent
40% shade.
Just
40. That's what Ross uses. I used 22, and I liked Ross's better. I got to copy him now. The student is now the master, right?
That's how good a teacher he is.
And I've done 66% shade
Yeah.
and grown 9,000 pounders. It's too much, but I got a great deal on it.
Yeah. I think more is better than 2. I can tell you this, 22 is not enough.
What's too much though, you think? of shade?
To me, I think 40 is optimal. So as you get further from that number,
So I have that netting and I put 40 on that, so I'm,
so you're double shading
so
it.
I'm
Well,
probably,
22.
what is it,
22,
so I'm
so I
about
would-
60. Well, just on the south side of the plant, the other side I don't.
Yeah. Well,
But maybe that's too much, huh?
You grew
it might be a little heavy, but it worked. Okay. What are you saying?
explain, because I agree with
What's that
you.
green stuff that we bought?
Explain like, if you can, my plant, like
white
outside of my
stuff
greenhouse,
that
it grew huge and beautiful and did so well. So I was confused because I was
Black's
like,
50.
no, the shade's supposed to help it, but everything outside of the shade was amazing.
Interesting. Do you feel like it was hot out there, or?
It was just a lucky year because if, you're gonna get leaf scald if you don't have shade cloth.
I don't know how I didn't, that's what. 'cause I
Could
was
be,
getting burned
plants
on the
are
way.
different. Have you noticed that with different seeds?
Yes.
Like some are more heat tolerant. Maybe your seed liked the heat. A couple other things on 10. Who here waters from the hours of 5 a.m. to 10 a.m.?
Start about 9.
9?
I do at 5.
Okay. Who here waters from, say, 10 a.m. to 5? Okay. Who waters from 5 till midnight? Any 2 in the morningers? Okay, so the point being, with your lawn, the state of Utah is going to tell you to water at night or early in the morning. You didn't hear it from me, but it's way better to water dead middle of the day, okay? And throughout the day, because it's doing two things. Number one, it's cooling down your plant, and we get great evaporative cooling in Utah because it's so dry here. So that water that's evaporating off your plant is dropping your temps probably 15 degrees, like a swamp cooler in your house.
I actually have measured it.
So, I mean, it's substantial.
It'll hold it for like an hour. You water it.
Oh yeah,
and no,
because
it-
all
it'll-
that
it'll be 15
evaporative
degrees-
cooling effect.
It'll be 15 degrees cooler for an hour.
So as Ross is watering every few minutes,
Yeah.
you know, and he put up his how many per hours, but it was how many per, it was like 2 minutes every 10 or something, or 20. So it was frequently during the day, just a little bit, to
Ross,
create
did you
that.
notice any extra fungus last year, or you had it because of that? Keep it
No,
more
I
humid?
haven't.
Well, and that's a great point. I will say
I've had
this,
some
if
issues
you
with that.
do what I'm telling you to do, and you don't
Prevent that
spray,
fungus too, yeah.
you're done.
So how many people will do drip and then also do spray? Because I've been doing mostly drip the last several years.
I've done that. I think I'm just gonna go to full spray.
I did both.
But I also think it doesn't really matter, because
Well, the drip won't cool your plant.
he's done both. I've done overhead. You've done tape. I've done tape. I've done under canopy. I've done over
But I
canopy.
haven't done 1,000.
But honestly, it just the plant. I mean, to me that's a sand thing. It's not a big rock thing. How do you get the water under your plant? I know guys who've grown 2,000 pounders with one of those $16 rainbow sprinklers that goes like this. And they put it on a lawn chair in the middle of the plant, and it just, so you don't need to spend $1 million. That's a sand thing. Just bottom line is get the water on the plant. I look at pumpkin growing and pumpkin feeding just like cooking. Does anybody Food Network? Somebody likes Food Network? Like nobody?
I love it.
So one thing you'll notice about these guys, have you ever seen like Bobby Flay go to battle? Is he like looking over, hey, how many cups of, okay.
No.
Is he like, wait, the salt is where, because it's all like, right? It's just automatic. He's looking at his food and he knows what to put in. He's done it so many times. But at first, I bet when Bobby Flay was 12 years old, he probably was looking at a recipe. So at some point, we need to start with recipes and move from recipes to feel. I think plants talk to you. So they talk to you by saying, vine split. What is that telling me? What is the plant telling me? It's saying, dude, little too fast. But more commonly, what's probably happening with us is we're like, the plant could do this, but we're more like this, afraid to like go too far, right? So we're like, oh, I don't want to blow it up. And I hear these kind of myths all the time. If I feed my plant this much while it's growing super fast, my pumpkin is going to split. Well, it might. But it also might not. Somebody needs to explain to me, how does Ross's pumpkin go 60 a day and not split, and mine's doing 20 a day and I'm worried about it splitting? I shouldn't be worried about it splitting, although it does happen. I split about half mine, so full disclosure. Full disclosure.
Make sure you grow two.
But I do believe the only way to know what it can do is to go too far, then back it off.
Yeah.
It's like I'm walking up to a cliff until my toes are hanging off and then saying, okay, this is the edge. But what we tend to do is be so afraid of the edge that we don't go to the edge, hence underfeed, underspray, and underperform. And if, I've heard this myth, okay? Oh, it rained 2 inches and then my plant split. Guess what that to me translates? Dude, if you caused a growth surge by putting water on your plant, you should have been watering the damn thing the whole time that way. The plant is telling you, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. If it splits because of too much water, you are underwatering, in my opinion. Now, I know people will disagree with this, but that's personally what I think. If, for instance, if there's an optimal here, here's too little, here's too much. What would happen if I got too much water? What would my plant do? Like if it sogs out. It would slow down. It's not going to speed up because I'm already at optimal. Like if I go either side of optimal, the performance of the plant is going down. So if I'm over here and I'm underwatering and then it dumps 2 inches of rain and then it surges and then it splits, in my opinion, we were probably too far, under to begin with.
So when you're in recipe mode, right, getting started, do you have a measurement idea for if your plant is growing quickly or not? Or are you
I just look at the plant and listen to it. So here's where we're in recipe mode, okay? Because I know that this is not easy to do like the first time or 2 or 3, but by time 5, you will hear your plant talking to you. So here's the written recipe, okay? Of all places this is found, don't take a picture, go buy a bag. This isn't Matt McConkie. This is on the side of the bag. Okay, so it's giving me 2 options for feeding. What are the 2 options that it's giving me?
Continuous?
Continuous, meaning every time the plant gets water, it also gets
Fertilized.
every time. So how often do you fertilize? Well, my sprinklers kick on 25 times a day. And I'm not putting a full dose of fertilizer on it every 25 times a day. Don't think that. But you see, this is a bag of Peters. This is a very standard fertilizer. It is not fancy. It is not expensive. It is very standard, comparable to Miracle Grow type product. This is what I use. This is what Ross uses.
Yeah.
This is not some...
Go get it today, it's gonna be twice as much next month.
So it's telling me, so continuous, and the other one is
Pulse.
periodic or pulse. What that means is maybe I'll feed it once a week. Not everybody has like the ability to to do a continuous, you need an injector. Okay, they're $400. It's not a fun spend, but that's the reality. And if you don't want to do that,
Smaller ones for.
you can get siphon jets for like $20. They're a little more unpredictable based on water pressure and other things. So kind of get the feel
You've
for
got to
it.
manage your water pressure to get it set just right.
You
a
do.
little bit,
And you can test that, but if you can do continuous, that's what I like. If you want to do periodic, that's fine too. I think a weekly feed is just fine.
If you put a cup of fertilizer in your water and then you inject it all out, then it's gone. You put a cup on. You know
Yes.
how much you put on.
So what it's telling me to do here on the continuous side, it's giving me how much nitrogen is in that fertilizer. You want to hit the nitrogen early and hit it hard from the second those little leaves pop out, I'm hitting it. I mean, you can do what you want. I know people say it's bad for seedlings. I know people say don't do it while you're pollinating. I've never had a problem splitting a pumpkin while pollinating. I've never had a problem with aborts. I've never had a problem with like hurting a seedling. So I think I'm like, if we're doing it too far away from the edge, maybe we're missing out on something, I don't hit it full blown, like full concentrate right at seedling, okay? I go like half mix, or maybe a little on the low side of what it's telling me to do on the label, but hit it consistent.
At the beginning, do you do on the ground versus foliar, or do you know?
I do not believe plants are
They don't
designed to absorb much nutrition, and I know there's such thing as foliar, but it's minor compared to the root uptake, in my opinion.
That's what I was gonna ask.
So the roots are designed to suck up nutrients out of the soil. That's how plants work. Can the leaves soak up a little? Maybe, yeah. But get it in the soil where the roots want it, you know, so soak it in there with a drench.
And the capillary action of the roots then just sucks that water up. And so-
Absolutely.
So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you keep your soil wet, it's out there sucking water.
Yeah.
And the more water,
The more water, the more weight.
the more weight.
I will say on this label, I followed this label to a T. I got heavy on nitrogen in about 3 weeks. It was building up in my compost. It's holding on to it. And it got heavy and started splitting vines. So I think every soil is different. If you have a heavy clay soil, go back to step one. Don't even do this. Just go back to step one until we're like to a point where the soil's draining, and then watch your plant. If it splits, if it's soggy, if it's super dark green early, we have a problem. The plant is saying, problem, stop, right? We had that problem with Ross as one of his plants, his
Yeah,
little one
35-inch crack.
was like splitting left and right, super blue, and we said, well, maybe we're at the edge here, you know, like, right?
Yeah.
So one other quick thing, if a pizza box that you buy at the frozen section in the oven says, hey, put in it for 18 minutes, and after 16 minutes you look over and there's smoke coming out of the oven, don't think to yourself,
We gotta wait 8
well, it says 18 minutes. The plant is telling you to stop, just like the pizza is saying, dude, not only are we done, it's toast time. So the plant will tell you that. But mostly, I think what happens is probably we're underdone a little. Okay, so this is telling us, this is on the label. If you want to just pull it up on the internet. This is the label of the 20-20-20. It's telling you how to set your thing up. You dump the 20-20-20 in a 5-gallon bucket to calculate out how much nitrogen you're going to pump onto your plant on a continuous feed, or how much nitrogen at a higher level you're going to pump onto your plant at a single feed, like once a week kind of thing. Okay? Read the label. I know it's like, some people will look at it and be like, oh man, that's a lot of math and numbers and whatever. You
Call
know,
Gordon.
do what you can do. Call Gordon, he'll work the numbers for you, and you'll be golden, okay? So that's not a fancy thing. Now, once about mid-June hits, we got a problem every single year, every time, and that is excess nitrogen. But by that time, your plant is an absolute monster. The pumpkin is set. The thing's growing a foot a day. Your stump is like this. Your vine's like my forearm, right, though?
Yeah.
And like, it's growing like crazy. But the problem is that nitrogen is now building up. The plant's run out of room. By July 1st, you really don't have any more room. Or maybe the 15th. If you're pushing it hard from the beginning.
Just a quick question, like, can you give us a ballpark figure on like 1,000 square feet, how much nitrogen, or how much 20-20-20 have you put on the plant by this time? How many pounds? Do you know?
No.
Or have you never kept track?
It doesn't matter, because every time it hits water, it's this, I don't ever water with water.
Well, I know, but I mean,
So-
you've dumped so many bags, and how many bags?
I don't know, a couple, probably.
Okay. I just-
Probably one per plant. One bag.
will tell
A
you.
$20 bag of fertilizer is going to grow you a $1,500 pound pumpkin. It's not a lot. It's like cups per week, not like bags per week.
Well, I know that, I was just curious, is like, if you put.
But it's cups per week, not tablespoons.
Not tables. If you're adding fertilizer in the form of a teaspoon or a tablespoon, we got a problem.
I'm just trying to.
But it's probably like in the neighborhood of, well, it's different because see, I'm doing it when the plant's this big. So at fruit growth, when your plant's like no more nitrogen, don't stop feeding. Feed it something else with low nitrogen or no nitrogen.
So if you're pollinating on the 20th of April, you're changing to urea mate at that
True.
point. See what
Yeah,
I mean?
urea mate, or I mean, whatever. I don't even, to me, the brand or like the kind of fertilizer is like a sand item. Getting the fertilizer numbers on the plant is like a big rock item. Get the right amount on there. I don't care if it's Scott's or urea
But you're
mate
going
or,
potash after you're pollinating.
Potash?
Yeah, potash.
yeah, I do. It's cheap. It's, I mean, $20 and your bag will do you for the year.
My guy drives out to Great Salt Lake and gets it out there.
Just digs it up in the sand?
So if you have a
So,
two,
company, yeah.
So on the label of urea mate, Alan, to answer your question, it says 0.46 pounds per week, which would be 1 cup per week on your plant, 1,000 square feet. That's adjusted. That's the high rate on the. I would probably, with urea mate, I would double it. With or more. Watch. I just go till it's like, whoa, stop. Now also get your tests. Measure. I measure soil, like how much fertilizer's in the soil, and that'll help you out too. My intent with you guys is, I joke like I'm a secret keeper. I'm really not. Like, if you've ever called me, I'll just tell you what I do. I might be wrong. I'm not intentionally leading anyone astray. I lose a lot of pumpkins.
you've changed theories over time.
I change every year. It's like I went all fish and organic one year. Oh, that was okay, but I'm going to try all chemical.
No shade cloth.
No shade cloth. Lots of shade cloth. Fans. I mean, I've tried it all, and some of it has worked, and some of it was bad. So in 3 years, you'll ask me, I'll tell you I was crazy in 2022. I don't know what else to do, but just tell you what I think at the moment. And I do want to see you guys not break 1,000, but break 2,000 pounds. And so that's all I know. I hope it works for you guys. I do care about you. I thought a lot about today. What can I tell you that will help the most? What are the biggest rocks that we can put in your jar?
Okay. My leaves are always like about this tall and about this big around.
Well, I can.
Have you seen Ross's? Have you seen Ralph's? Have you
Mine
seen-
are taller and bigger than those guys.
I tell you what usually happens there.
What's got-
Shade. So it's up against like a silk fence or up against a fence or under a tree. Sometimes those leaves will pop, or at the end of a vine termination.
Yeah. those ones
Like
get
when you
big.
cut a secondary and bury the end, those leaves, it's like all that juice in that hose is like, and it'll swell them up. So maybe you need more space. That's the other thing, is it could be like, your soil's so good, Brent, I'm getting the sun, I'm getting the food, I'm in a space that like I'm bursting out of, and there's nowhere to go with all this nutrition. Could be. Yeah, something. I mean, I've seen it happen. Those are the 3 times. End of secondaries, shade,
What's that?
and too small of a space.
Do you shade cloth?
Yeah,
How much percent?
40.
The more shade, the bigger the leaves, because the leaf is saying, I want sun. If it's hot and it's in the open, the leaves will stay smaller if there's no shade. Because it's getting the photosynthesis it needs out of a leaf this big instead of this big. Anyway, anything else before we wrap up?
So you on the feeding, and you say the roots are way more important than the foliar stuff.
I believe.
Where
Probably like a 90-10.
Yeah, do you think the stump is where it takes the most in, or how important?
Yes.
When you bury the vines, how much is, being taken up? Like when you put, the stuff under the vines.
The stump is the most important. Second, the main
Yeah.
toward the pumpkin.
Yeah,
Those
right there.
secondaries, or those roots, if you pull up your main,
Yeah.
there are roots in there like
Yeah.
carrots.
My vine all gets,
By the time you
way
hit the
bigger
very
than
tips,
the
like
main, but-
40 feet out on the main secondaries, those little roots at the end of the
Yeah.
season are just sort of little. But focus it on
Do you think
what I
it's
call
mostly
like
gets
the
taken in
golden
from the stump
triangle.
and in to
The first few secondaries triangling to the pumpkin like 10 feet out. So if you can't do compost, the whole place, focus it in that triangle. Put your money where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. Put your energy, your time in the best bang for your buck. Okay, thanks you guys. Jim.